So one of the most important Second Amendment questions in the country right now is, can the government outright ban rifles in standard capacity magazines? There are currently multiple cases seeking Supreme Court review on this very issue, and just as pressure was building for the Supreme Court to step in, a key development just changed a lot with this issue. A major ruling that was being used to show a split across the country has now been erased and sent back for a rehearing. So let's talk about, how this is impacting some of these cases pending in front of the Supreme Court and what also just developed in one of these critical cases. Now, before we jump into this video, if you want to support the channel, one of the best ways to do that is simply by subscribing. You can also hit the like button. That just tells the algorithm that you appreciate this content, and so it shares it with more people. I also want to thank the sponsor of this video, which is Patriot Gold Group. If you've been watching the markets closely, you will know that something unusual is happening. Silver has surged to over 158% in 2025, and this move isn't over yet. It looks like the opening chapter is just happening right now. This is not the finale at all. Gold is up 60%, silver is up 150%, and that kind of move doesn't just happen by accident. Now, as a member of the Second Amendment community, this concept already makes sense to you. You believe in self-reliance, in not outsourcing your safety, and in being prepared before you're forced to actually react. Your finances deserve the same type of mindset that your self-defense also gets. That's why I work with Patriot Gold Group. They help Americans protect their savings with physical gold and silver, and these metals you can have delivered to you or held in a no-fee-for-life IRA. They specialize in rolling over IRAs and 401ks into real, tangible assets that you actually own. Now, this isn't about market panic or anything like that. It's about positioning yourself and putting yourself in the best position to defend your finances like you would defend your life. So if you're interested, check out Patriot Gold Group. You can mention Armed Scholar when you check out to get the best-in-class service from the Patriots that are focused on protecting your investments, or you can call 888-581-3830, and you can get also a free investment guide and see if you qualify for a no-fee-for-life IRA on qualifying rollovers. Now, as I mentioned in the intro, in this video, we're going to be discussing a major rifle and magazine ban challenge called NAGR versus Lamont, which is now sitting in front of the Supreme Court along with other critical cases like Vermontes and Duncan. This case here challenges Connecticut's categorical ban on AR-15 style rifles and magazines capable of holding more than 10 rounds. Like some of these other cases, this Connecticut challenge has been rescheduled multiple times for Supreme Court conference. Also in this case, the plaintiffs introduced the recent magazine ban decision out of DC to show that there is a growing split on the constitutionality of these type of bans. Now, here's what happened in this case and why this case really stands out. The lower court here didn't dispute that these firearms and magazines are clearly in common use for lawful purposes. They basically admitted that, but then they still upheld the ban anyway. Essentially, their reasoning is that these items are so dangerous that they can still be restricted. They said that even if a firearm is in common use, it can still be banned if the court decides it's too dangerous. Now, think about what that really means for everyone nationwide. That completely rewrites the Supreme Court's test when it comes to the Second Amendment, because now it's no longer about whether something is commonly owned or used. It's about whether a state or judge thinks that these items cannot be allowed because they're too dangerous. And if that logic stands, there is no real limiting principle. Any firearm or any item could be banned under that type of framework simply because a certain state or a specific judge thinks that that item is too dangerous. So after that ruling, the plaintiffs here in this case filed for Supreme Court review and they wanted the Supreme Court to step in. But again, this issue is not just one single case. There are other, cases pending in front of the Supreme Court addressing this similar type of issue. Right now, the Supreme Court is also looking at multiple rifle and magazine ban cases like the Duncan versus Bonta case, dealing with California's magazine ban, the Vermontes case out of Illinois, dealing with Illinois' ban on rifles and magazines, and then also this case, NAGR versus Lamont out of Connecticut. All of these cases are raising the same kind of core issue, and all of these cases are being relisted over and over again at conference. And that's also kind of important because relist usually means that the Supreme Court justices are at least actively discussing these cases, but this high number of relists can indicate that maybe a denial is potentially coming. Now, here's where things recently shifted with these cases. A court in DC in the Benson case struck down DC's ban on magazines that hold more than 10 rounds. The court held that magazines over 10 rounds are protected arms, that they're in common use for lawful purposes, and that they cannot outright be banned. So plaintiffs in this case and other cases immediately pointed to that decision, and they said that there is now a clear split among courts on this issue and that the Supreme Court needs to finally step in and address this issue. But now everything has shifted and changed based on what just happened. The DC Court of Appeals has granted a rehearing en banc in the Benson case and also vacated that lower court ruling. That means that the ruling striking down the magazine ban is no longer binding and that it's essentially gone, at least for now. And that development has now been formally submitted to the Supreme Court in this case. Connecticut filed a notice telling the court that the Benson decision that they relied on, to show this circuit split has now been vacated and that the case is being reheard en banc. So now even that argument has shifted, and that type of support that was being presented to the Supreme Court for why they needed to step in is currently off the table. But even with Benson and that decision currently, blocked for now, the core issue in these cases has not gone away. You still have courts upholding bans on AR-15s and these standard capacity magazines, even while acknowledging that they are commonly owned and used nationwide by law-abiding individuals. And that is directly in tension with what the Supreme Court has said in some of their precedent, like Heller, Bruin, and other cases. So right now, the Supreme Court is looking at all of this together, looking at the multiple cases, the same issues dealing with rifle bans and magazine bans, and then also conflicting approaches even among those courts which have upheld these type of bans. There have been a lot of courts that have upheld these rifle bans and magazine bans, but there are multiple ways in which they approach this. Some saying that these are protected arms, but they can be restricted anyway, and then some courts saying that they're not protected arms at all. And the Supreme Court is also looking at how the legal landscape is still shifting, and there's a lot of things that are still changing with these issues. So there are a few things that could still happen with this issue. The court could grant maybe one of these cases or maybe all of these cases. They can continue to relist them and kind of put them in this continued holding pattern, maybe waiting for another ruling in a case like the one out in Third Circuit, where we're simply waiting for that A&J RPC case, which deals with New Jersey's ban, to be resolved. Or they could simply just be pushing this because potentially they're going to deny them outright, and maybe one of the justices or maybe multiple are planning to write a dissent. But repeated relists tell you something. This issue is at least being considered, and maybe if there is going to be a denial, maybe at least we'll get a dissent written in these cases, maybe expressing frustrations from some of the members of the Supreme Court about how the Supreme Court keeps punting on this issue. So this is where things currently stand with this case and other rifle bans and magazine bans pending in front of the Supreme Court. You've had multiple major rifle bans and magazine ban cases sitting in front of the Supreme Court. You had a decision that appeared to create a split, but that decision has now been vacated. That's, referencing the Benson ruling. And now the court is being forced to decide whether to step in now or let the lower courts keep fighting over this issue. So that's the latest update in one of these critical Second Amendment cases dealing with rifle bans and magazine bans, this one specifically in Connecticut. As soon as we get more information, as soon as maybe the Supreme Court finally has some movement on this issue, I will let you guys know. If you like this video and you'd like to support the channel, one of the best ways to do that is simply to like, comment, and subscribe. All of those things help to fuel the algorithm and just tells the algorithm that you appreciate this content, and so it shares it with more people. But as always, thank you so much for all of your support. And never forget, this nation was built by armed scholars, and this nation will be maintained by armed scholars.